The Saints have already turned plenty of heads this NFL season, taking down the Panthers and Cowboys in the first two games. Can they do the same to the Eagles this Sunday? That's the question that we're going to answer here on the Straight Up Saints podcast.
You're listening to the Straight Up Saints podcast.
What is up, Who Dat Nation? Welcome back inside another edition of the Straight Up Saints podcast. I'm your host, Chris Rosevoglu, and as always, we are brought to you by Scott McNair Injury Lawyers. If you've been injured in any kind of accident, car, truck, 18-wheeler, or hurt offshore, Scott McNair handles it all. You give him a call at 504-500-1111 for a free consultation. They'll always fight for the win. Saints-Eagles Week 3. That's the matchup. Really exciting one. Another opportunity for the Saints to show where they belong, where they stack up in the NFC. And the Saints and Eagles have had some history the last couple of years. We've seen Jalen Hurts have big games. We've seen them take out the Eagles when they were playing their best ball. Granted, Gardner Minshew was starting. Obviously, go back to the playoff game with Marshawn having the game-sealing pick. So, decent amount of history between these teams the last couple of years. And I'm excited to see how this game unfolds. But before we get into the key matchups, and I think there's one that is so prominent for the Saints. To me, it's the determining factor whether or not they walk out with a W or not. I want to focus on Derek Carr for a little bit before we get into the full Eagles game. And before the season started, let's just call it what it is. Derek Carr was not in great standing with the Who Dat Nation. I think it would be very easy to just say Carr, in terms of where he stacked up with other players on this team, not beloved, a lot of criticism. And to some degree, I got it, right? There was a frustration that the Saints signed him. He was supposed to take them to the next step. And while they won more games, they went from 7-10 to 9-8. It didn't feel right until the end. And even at the end, I know a lot of people were thinking, okay, well, it's the competition. You're out of the race. You're a little loose now, less pressure. And everyone wanted to know, could you build off that? Could you take the strong finish from last year and carry over to this year? And so far, granted, it's only been 2 games, the answer hasn't just been yes. I think Derek Carr is starting to play some of the best football, maybe the best football of his career. And Saints fans, I think, have done a really nice job of being equally loud with the praise as they were with the criticism. Maybe they got to put up the praise a little bit more than we have already. But what I'll say for Derek, and I think this is definitely a true fact, if you look at the numbers right now, what he's doing, that's what the Saints envisioned when they signed him. That's what us fans hoped for when they signed him. Just going to go through the numbers here, and I had to write them down today because I couldn't believe how staggering they were in a great way. And I'm going to list this down, and you tell me what you think about that type of quarterback, because it's not like he's just playing game manager football. He's doing some really great things when he has the opportunity to pass. So let's go through it. 76.9 completion percentage this season. That's insane. If we're just going off completion percentage, that's second in the NFL. He's got 443 passing yards. Probably would have more if they needed him to, but they're not exactly in dire needs of throwing the football because they're running all over people. But anyway, 400 plus yards, 6 total touchdowns, only 1 interception. If we go back to last season, dip into the end of last year, in the last 5 games for Derek Carr, he's got 14 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. But you want to focus on that different coordinator at the time of Pete Carmichael? Let's talk about the now. Let's talk about the facts for Derek Carr. He's first in passer rating. He is tied for first in passing touchdowns, and he's first in yards per pass. He has been outstanding for New Orleans. But above all else, and truly above all else, Derek Carr has done a great job of not taking victory laps and being super accountable. And Wednesday, was a moment for me that I think Derek Carr won a lot of people over. He was asked about the Saints offense, and he said in quotes, you see the stats, you see the numbers out there for the whole offense and where it's been in history and all that kind of stuff. And it's cool. But at the same time, it doesn't matter and mean anything for this week. That is the truth. Because for us Saints fans, we're having a grand time, right? We were dancing when they beat the Panthers, when they beat the crap out of the Cowboys. We were running through the streets. It's awesome. It's great. But you always know it's a week-to-week league, and we get that, and players know it more than us fans. And for Derek to be able to put up those numbers, and while at the same time be that leader, be super accountable, not take victory laps, because it'd be easy for Derek Carr to be like, man, I took a lot of shit last year. Now I'm going to throw it back at the fans. But he hasn't. I think he's getting it. And for Derek, it's really cool. He looks super comfortable right now. He looks super confident in this offense, and he deserves a lot of credit. And I've always said this about the quarterback position. You know that they're going to get the shit when things go wrong, and they're going to get most of the blame, and that's part of the position. But damn it, they deserve a lot of the credit too. And I want to give Derek credit because there's a lot of other players I'm going to talk about for this Eagles game in particular that I think are going to have the biggest impact. I don't think this game is that Derek Carr dependent as maybe other games would be, but you talk about starting off the season strong, both on and off the field. 2 thumbs up for Derek Carr, who's been great. And I saw it in the chat. And by the way, if you guys are watching the live stream, obviously this will be available after we're done recording live right now. But if you are watching and you enjoy the show, please give a thumbs up for this video. It greatly helps out the channel. And also subscribe if you haven't yet, because as you guys know, every week we have our halftime show powered by 4D. And then we also have our post-game live stream every single time. Post-game live stream, we get everyone's comments in. We go for a little bit over an hour. So those are pretty fun. So I really appreciate that. But I saw it in the chat, and I'll actually end on this before I get into the next topic. So the Saints found out this week that Derek Carr got fined $14,000 for that Michael Jackson kind of like, crotch grab dance move that everyone knows. It's iconic. If the NFL is going to fine him, why the fuck are you promoting it on social media? Like, I saw so many things this week on TikTok, maybe on Instagram Reels too, where they're showing Derek Carr doing the dance move after the rushing touchdown, and then him talking about how he's always been a dancer and things of that nature. And that's a great clip. That's a good viral moment. But I think the NFL's got to start deciding to and not to promote. If you're going to fine this dude $14,000 for a simple celebration that lasted all but 2 seconds, you probably shouldn't be, posting that on social media then. I think that's a little unfair. And we've seen it before. Tyreek Hill with the phone grab and the backflip. I thought it was a little ridiculous. Now, Derek Carr can afford a $14,000 fine, but I still thought it was a little odd that the NFL would do that. But again, that's in their wheelhouse. They've done this type of crap before. But Derek Carr, like I said, playing out of his mind, looking like a top quarterback in this league right now. And we're only through 2 weeks. But through 2 weeks, man, he's been pretty damn awesome. And he really deserves the credit. So, said I'm going to get into Saints, Eagles. Let's talk about it. It's week 3. Another opportunity for the Saints to win an NFC game and start off 2-0 in conference play is obviously great for New Orleans. And especially when one of them's in division, that's a big thing. But this is a matchup that can tell a lot. And there's nothing to me that stands out more for this game than New Orleans' ground game and Philly's defensive line. And I think that is a no-brainer. And that takes us into our tweet of the week, presented by Standard Mortgage, your local lender for life. To get in touch with a home loan expert today, give them a call at 504-569-3902. I said during the Monday night game between the Eagles and Falcons, Eagles run defense is getting exposed. Clint Kubiak is going to have that Saints run game ready for next Sunday. And I fully believe that Clint Kubiak is going to have that run game ready to go for the New Orleans Saints. Because, man, if you just go off the numbers, just going off the sheer numbers, the Saints right now are killing it on the ground, and the Eagles are getting smoked on the ground. Now, the eye test will tell you it all, right? Saints went into Dallas, bullied the heck out of the Cowboys. Alvin ran all over the field. It looked like it was just, normal practice for him. And if you watched Falcons-Eagles, unfortunate for us, because obviously us Saints fans wanted Philly to win, and they pulled the Falcons against the Falcons and choked it away in the final minute. I think when you watch that and you see Bijan Robinson, you see Tyler Algier just run up and down the field with little resistance, you kind of start licking your chops thinking, okay, this is the matchup for the Saints. And it is. Because the Saints right now, 3rd in the NFL in rushing yards. I'm looking at the number here, 185 yards per game on the ground. Philly, on the other hand, 157 yards per game given up on the ground. That is the blueprint that Clint Kubiak's going to expose. I have zero doubts about it. But it also, for me, goes beyond the numbers. Let's just talk personnel right now. The Saints, when it comes to their personnel, their guys in the trenches are kicking opponents in the ass every single game so far. They are moving people at the line of scrimmage, blowing them off the ball. And I think that's going to be a huge problem for Philly. I really do, because when I look at Philly and I see them in that Falcons game, their defensive linemen, particularly their guys on the edge, they are not your run stuffing type of guys. We give Dennis Allen and the Saints a lot of crap when they go after these bigger defensive ends, your Peyton Turners, your Davenports, all those type of guys. They like those bigger defensive ends because they don't want to get bullied in the run game. They want to make you one-dimensional, shut down the run, be able to keep those defensive ends on there for all 3 downs. And when I look at Philly, whether it is Huff, whether it's Nakobe Dean, whether it's Zach Bond, a former Saints player, I think those type of players you can get away with mauling in the ground game, particularly Bryce Huff. I think Huff is the key right there. I mean, he looked out of his league on Monday against the Falcons, and that's a guy that the Eagles paid a lot for. That was one of their prized possessions in free agency. So I think that's a guy you can absolutely target. And think about what New Orleans did last week, guys, right? They go into Dallas. Micah Parsons, who obviously is heads and shoulders better than freaking Bryce Huff, which no disrespect to Bryce Huff, but Micah's obviously in a league of his own there. They made Micah a non-factor. I talked about containing Micah. I thought there's no way you just shut him down completely. Saints run right at him the entire game, do a good job of blocking him. And Dallas's pass rushers, you could tell, they want to pin their ears back and go after the quarterback, but you got to earn it. You got to stuff teams on first and second down to earn that right to rush the passer. And they didn't earn the right. The Saints made sure they never had that opportunity. I think you could do the same thing with the Eagles. I really do. I really feel like the Saints can have their way there. Again, I talked about that Falcons game. Bijan, just under 7 yards per carry. Tyler Algier, just under 6 yards per carry. We're seeing what Alvin's doing this season. I think this is the blueprint. There's no doubt. I know slowing down Jalen Hurts in the ground game is going to be a big key, especially because Jalen Hurts has done a really good job against the Saints running the football. And I will give Jalen his credit. I thought as a runner on Monday night, he looked good. Everything else I have my doubts about. I think Jalen Hurts is a quarterback who gets a little bit too much love. But as a runner, he looked really decisive, and that concerns me a little bit. But you know what? You're the Saints. You bring in Willie Gay. Maybe he could play a big factor as that kind of QB spy in that area. So I'm curious to see how that unfolds. But there's no doubt. If someone tells you, hey, what's the key to this game? The key to this game, definitely, undoubtedly, is the Saints running the football against the Eagles. Because I think it is a strength versus a weakness going head-to-head. And the Saints have to take advantage. And remember, they got an extra day of rest. Eagles played on Monday night. You play on Monday night, you lose in really, really heartbreaking fashion. And then you got a quick turnaround against a team that probably wants to beat your ass in the trenches. Not exactly the best formula. So will the Saints make that statement? Will they win that game? We're going to talk about that in just a second. Before I do that, I want to get a quick message from one of our sponsors, Scott McNair.
And Jonathan Williams brings it all the way back from the 20-yard line.
What a terrific way to end the first half.
And tonight's game is brought to you by Scott Vicnair Injury Attorneys. They always fight for the win.
You mean attorney? It's one lawyer. Scott Vicnair?
No, there's two.
Brad Scott and David Vicnair.
Well, it's confusing.
That it is. They could have picked a better name.
Scott McNair, Injury Attorneys, we fight for the win.
Once again, thank you to Scott McNair for being part of the program. We greatly appreciate it. So, as I said, week 3, chance to make a statement for the New Orleans Saints. You're already 2-0. We've seen the amount of coverage the Saints have gotten just blow up after beating Dallas, whether it's NFL Network, FS1, ESPN, your favorite radio shows. Everyone's talking about the Saints outside of just your local guys that are covering the team. And to some degree, it's great. It's great. I know some people hate when there's a lot of attention on the Saints, and I like when the Saints are flying under the radar. Don't get me wrong. But I also like when the Saints are being talked about, even if that means someone's kind of disrespecting them a little bit. And I have seen a lot of people say, look, they've been good the first 2 weeks, but they might be fool's gold. They might just be playing really well while everyone's struggling. And maybe that ends up being true. It is possible. But if you go into Philly, you don't go into Philly. You have Philly coming home, and you beat them down just like you did Dallas. You start looking into the NFC, all of a sudden, the Saints are going to be looking a little different than you thought a couple weeks ago. Now, I said coming into this schedule, and especially after the Panthers game, minimum, but just I'll take it. Take a split. I'll take a split between Dallas and Philly. That's what I said. If that's what ends up happening, I still think the Saints are going to be in great shape. But your expectations start to change once you start showing different results. And New Orleans has done that to a great degree over the last 2 weeks. But like I said, you go into Dallas, you beat the brakes off the Cowboys. Now you come back home, you have Philly. You beat Philly, all of a sudden, you beat 2 NFC playoff teams from last season. We know you can beat Tampa. You beat them at their home turf last year. That's 3 of the 7 teams from last year's playoffs. Detroit, you can say whatever you want. The Saints, had they not gotten off to a bad start, they would have hung with Detroit. And they did technically. They just couldn't finish the comeback at the end. I believe they can hang with the Lions. The Rams, a playoff team from last year, injuries are killing them right now. And if they lose Sunday, they're 0-3. You feel like the season's over. That's another one off the board. So, yeah, there are teams you still have to worry about. Green Bay, which beat the Saints last year, were a playoff team last year. And then the 49ers, but again, health permitting, we'll see. They've been banged up too, just like the Rams. You're going to start looking at the Saints differently if they beat the Eagles. Maybe you won't. Maybe you already did, because I already did. And I look around and I say it. Every year there's a surprise team in the NFL. You don't see it coming. Tampa Bay was that for me last year. I thought Tampa Bay was going to be awful, guys. I really did. And they go out, they win the division, and they win a playoff game. Handily, too. They beat the crap out of the Eagles. the Saints have a similar feel, granted just 2 weeks in. And if they beat Philly on week 3, and all of a sudden they're 3-0, with 2 of those wins being against teams that won over 11 games or more last season, you have to look at this team differently. And you got to start wondering, in an NFC that doesn't have the sure things like the Chiefs with Mahomes, or even, those teams that are winless right now in the AFC. Bengals right now winless, but you still trust Joe Burrow to get it going at some point. Ravens, you still trust them with Lamar. Stroud's obviously been fantastic. Josh Allen is a one-man wrecking crew. There's so many great quarterbacks in the AFC that it makes it harder to make that run. In the NFC, there's not a lot of quarterback talent, at least not to the degree of the AFC. And it feels like we are entering a time where it's going to be Chiefs in the Super Bowl, and you're saying, well, who the heck's going to represent the NFC? So you're going to spin a wheel and see where it falls on. And why can't it be the Saints? I know it sounds ridiculous. We're 2 weeks in. But the vibe, the expectations, they're going to change, guys, if they win this game, especially if they win it convincingly. Because these are teams that are perennial playoff teams that you're smoking, and you're not doing it in a fluke nature. Blowing the Cowboys off the line of scrimmage, that's not a fluke. Your guys wanted it more and beat their ass in the trenches. You can replicate that on a week-to-week basis. If you do the same thing against Philly, you can replicate that. That's why I said everyone who watched week 1 and said, oh, it's just because it's the Panthers, watch the game. Last year when the Saints win and Derek Carr's only got like 37 passing yards for 3 quarters and they win, yeah, that's because it's the Panthers. When you score 47 points, 30 at halftime, and you can't go a single drive without scoring, that's not, oh, it's just the Panthers. You got a damn good football team, at least schematically, and the way they're executing. And it's not going to be perfect, guys. At some point, the Saints are going to hit a wall. It's normal. But they are doing things that work in the playoffs. Great defense that they have, that works in the playoffs. Running the football, that works. Now, Derek Carr doesn't have a playoff win. I get that. Derek Carr hasn't played well in the one playoff game that he had. I understand that. But there's time to learn. There's time to grow. And again, he's not asked to be the star of the team. He's not asked to shoulder the load for them. So I think week 3, you play Philly, you go out there and you beat the Eagles. I think it changes a lot. For me, it won't. I've seen enough to think that this team can manufacture wins this year and get to 10-7, maybe even 11-6. If they win this game, all of a sudden, again, you recalibrate things. Because right now, after the way the Saints have looked, 10-7 seems very feasible. They go to 3-0, 11-6 seems really feasible. And you just keep stacking wins and you start to add more to the resume of what this team does really good. Because right now they do a lot of things good. And I'm excited to see if they can keep it up. So week 3 against the Eagles, do I believe they're going to win this game? I do. I really do. I think they have the one extra day of rest is huge. And I think Clint Kubiak, when you have an offensive coordinator now who is going to attack mismatches, you're in good hands. Because we said all week, if you're going to beat Dallas, you got to run at those defensive linemen and make them get worn down. And he did exactly that. And now you're playing, in my opinion, a lesser Eagles defense. And if the Eagles want to add guys into the box, they want to step up into the box because they feel like they have to slow down the run, good luck, because that secondary can get exposed. Don't take it from me. Just go watch the last minute of that Falcons game and watch Kirk Cousins with one good leg shred that defense. They can be exposed in the back end as well. So I think this is a great script for the Saints in terms of the matchup. They just got to go out and execute. But I feel really good, and I can't believe I'm saying this because a year ago, I'm sitting here talking about wanting people fired on the coaching staff. I feel really good about what this coaching staff is doing right now in terms of setting the mindset, in terms of mentality, and then the game plan for their guys to go out there and get the job done. So I'm feeling really great about this team. So let's see what you guys are saying about this team, and we'll get into our last portion here, our little Q&A, which again is presented by Sunshine, your hometown John Deere. Nothing runs like a deer. Let's go into what you guys have going on. Pelicans Nola says, what's up, guys? Who dat? Let's go Saints. Jerry G says the NFL should be ashamed of themselves. I'm guessing. Oh, Jerry put it here. In case you missed it, the NFL fined Derek Carr $14K for his Michael Jackson dance Sunday. Shameful. No fun league is added again. Yeah, I said it before, and I agree, Jerry. It's pretty crazy. Don't promote it. Don't promote it if you're going to go out there and find the guy. It just seems a little ridiculous. Pablo says, I really do wonder how much of the success the Saints offense has had through 2 weeks is due to teams not knowing what Kubiak would do scheme-wise and Pete's predictable-ass offense being done with. It could play a factor, and that's why, Pablo, I said before, they're going to hit a wall at some point. The Saints aren't going to be scoring 40 points a game. They're averaging 45.5 points right now. mind-blowing numbers. You can't sustain that type of success. It's literally impossible. They're not going to average 45.5 points per game. It's just not going to happen. But the Saints will be able to go out there and have success as long as that run game is working and the offensive line is creating those lanes. And remember, they're going to get Kendra Miller back at some point. I think he could play a big role in this offense. I thought it pre-injury, and I feel it before. You know, I really feel like he can be a big factor if he gets healthy. But yeah, look, part of it is not having enough to go off. But Clint also was an offensive coordinator with the Vikings. And that was before his stay in San Francisco. Maybe he learned a thing or two. Not maybe. He definitely learned a thing or two from the 49ers and watching Kyle Shanahan operate, who I believe is a top 3 coach in this league. So I think you're seeing a little bit more from Clint now, especially in the run game. He's been fantastic. And teams will adjust. And Clint will have his opportunity to show how he adjusts to the defensive adjustments. And that's going to be fun. It's going to be a nice little chess match. So, yeah, they're not going to score 40 a game. It's not going to happen. But I do think they're going to be a good offense the whole year as long as they stay healthy for the most part. Chase says Saints are unstoppable. That's what I like. Yeah, I mean, that's what we all like. We like to see the Saints be unstoppable. I don't know how long that's going to last, but that's what we want. Justin says, could you envision a move for Devontae Adams? He knows Carr, our wide receiver coach, was his personal coach for years. He knows the system from playing under LaFleur and feels a need for a bigger wide receiver. I don't know if that will happen. I don't hate the idea, though, and I said it last weekend after the Saints beat the Cowboys. The Saints are going to reach a point where if they keep playing like this, they're going to have to be aggressive at the deadline. Because as much as I love the scheme, I do think they need one more playmaker. Because injuries get in the way. As the playoffs get closer and games get more physical, you need other guys to step up. And guys like Mason Tipton, they're doing the little things well. Mason Tipton's doing a really good job as a run blocker. You need playmakers, though. They need a physical wide receiver. So, yeah, Devontae, in theory, that sounds great. I don't anticipate it, though. Raiders might F around and be a little frisky this year and say, you know what, we're not trading Devontae. We're going to wait. So, yeah, on paper, it sounds great. I don't anticipate that happening. I do think, though, if you're the Saints, you're looking at veteran wide receivers on the market. If they're available, if they're not, a burden for future years in contract, because I think you're trying to be responsible to a certain degree. You don't want to add a future cap, but if the Saints can go out there and acquire a pass catcher who's going to do well for them, I think that they're going to be in a really, really good spot. And again, it's 2 games in. Their record could change. Things can go off the rails. I don't anticipate it, nor do I want that to happen at all. I am enjoying the hell out of this start to the season they got going on. But I believe that this team should be in the market to add talent when we get closer to the deadline in November. Whether it's Devontae, maybe a tanking team is trying to move on. So we'll see what happens. Justin says, obviously getting ahead of myself and assuming the Saints continue looking like a playoff team and they need to make the cap work and all that. But I think if they could get it done, he's a good fit, referring to Devontae. I don't disagree with that. Jerry G says we need to pay Kamara first. Alvin, I always said if they could find a deal where he gets his money, it's not crazy long-term because you never know when a running back's like great years just fall off. It's great because I think you, want to have a guy like Alvin who embraces the culture. You love his leadership, and you know he's still a factor. When we're watching him against Dallas, you start wondering, well, how many prime years are left? Because I can make an argument he's still got a lot of mileage on those. And on the other hand, you never know with running back. So it's a tricky proposition. But yeah, I hope Alvin stays with the Saints for life. Honestly, he's embraced the culture more than any of us could have expected, and he's done more than any of us could have expected as a 3rd-round pick. Jerry G says, admit it, Roger Scrudell hates the Saints. It's nothing new. Hard to argue against that. Jack says Mahomes could give the double bird to the camera and get paid $14,000. That's pretty funny. I don't want to mispronounce this. If I mispronounce it, please let me know. I think it's Wahab Sharif. Says best rushing offense versus run defense. Their offense is okay, but Hurts has been struggling. He's ranked 32nd for negative actions for quarterbacks. First is Carr with 12% of throws being picks. Yeah, look, I do not like Jalen Hurts' decision-making right now at all, So I think that you can get in there. You just got to make sure he's not running wild. That to me is what I'll be concerned about. If he's running wild, then you got to worry about this Eagles offense. If you kind of keep him at bay, I think he's going to make mistakes, and I don't think he has the arm talent to really overcome it. Like this might sound like a hot take to others, but I don't think it should be. If we're just talking arm, Derek Carr is a superior quarterback to Jalen Hurts. Now, Jalen Hurts has that playmaking ability that makes him dangerous. You got to limit it, though. He can't be running as wild as he did against the Falcons, or else you're going to have a little bit of a problem there. Jack says Eagles defense looked horrible against the Falcons, hardly a pass rush, and Darnell Mooney beat their corners deep. He did. And you mentioned the pass rush, Jack, only 3 sacks through 2 games. And remember those first 2 games for them. Jordan Love, who can move, but not like, a speedster at the quarterback position. And then Kirk Cousins, who literally can't move. So 3 sacks, not great. Jack said, how much would you bet for another 3-touchdown game from Kamara? I don't know about 3. But again, I'm not going to give gambling advice. I am probably going to put money on him to score 2 touchdowns. Again, I love the matchup for him. I really do. T-Ray says Saints will be getting a lot of national attention. Will they get distracted and lose focus because of the hype? I don't think so. I think this team knows how, I don't want to say disrespected, but how irrelevant they were in the public's eye. And they're still technically irrelevant in the public's eyes, guys. This team doesn't have a Sunday night game on the schedule. Falcons got a Sunday night next week. This past Sunday night was the Chicago fucking Bears, and they did nothing. The Saints don't have a Sunday night game. You got your obligatory Monday night, your obligatory Thursday night. They don't have a Sunday night game. So national attention, I mean, they're all vets. And I think for the Saints, a lot of these guys know how to handle it. Cam Jordan's been there and done that. DeMario's been there and done that. Alvin's been there and done that. Look, Derek hasn't been there and done that with the Saints, but Derek was on a Raiders team that in the same season had their coach get fired for racist remarks and their best wide receiver get cut for literally being in a fatal car accident. So, I mean, he's been through the ringer. He knows how much attention, whether it's good or bad, can be on a team and how to handle it. They still made the playoffs that year. So I think for the Saints, I'm not really worried about that aspect. They don't come across that way for me. And like I said, they still don't have a Sunday night game. I still think the leadership's good. T5 the Great says, send Alante after him like they did against Bryce. They didn't blitz as much against Dallas, so you can send the blitz against Philly, stop the run, then you can have some fun. I love that idea. So if that happens, we'll come back to that comment. I want to bookmark that one because that's a great one. John says, I want to know if Hayball is a good punter so I can buy a jersey. My Blake Gillikin jersey is getting lonely. I don't want to know if Hayball is a good punter. I hope they never punt again. But in all seriousness, at some point, that's going to have to come up. Hayball in the limited reps that he's gotten has been solid, but you don't really get to see a lot, nor do you want to. But at some point, it'll happen. Like I said, the Saints will reach a point where they kind of hit a wall, Curtis says, Saints are going to fall on their face. We'll see about that, Curtis. We'll see. Kimberly says, I'm betting the house on AK. Look, I never want to bet the house on anything, but if you're gonna, that seems to be the one that people are going towards. Justin says, I'm intrigued to see how the new offense handles a situation where they can't get off to a hot start and facing an early deficit. Will they be able to make in-game adjustments? I am very fascinated to see that. I do agree. How do they handle adversity? We haven't seen it yet. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Zay says, goal is to stop the run. Our defense struggled versus running QBs, tight ends, and the run as a whole. This is a good test. It is a good test in that category. I totally agree with that. But I think they're more than capable of handling it. Jack says, not to get off topic, but another NFC team besides the Saints that has surprised me with their potential is the Cardinals. Yeah, a game against the Bills, they lose, but they were up for the majority of it and then smoked the Rams. I believe Cardinals have the Lions this week. If the Cardinals beat the Lions, that's another team. The public's perception of them is going to change. Zay says, perfect offense for Kendre Miller. Zone blocking scheme is for him as a downhill explosive back. It's going to be epic. I agree. I think if Kendre is healthy, guys, you are going to see this run game get even better. You're going to be able to take some of the physical burden off of Alvin, which is great. And I think Kendre can rock. He's just got to be healthy. And it's a big if. And I understand that. And there's got to be frustration that he hasn't been healthy. But this is the system for him to shine. Jack says this game is an Olave touchdown game. I believe it. I mean, I'm not going to go against that. I think this is a very, very weak Eagles secondary. And I would love nothing more than for Gardner Johnson to get smoked. We'll see if he plays, though. Didn't practice today because of a foot injury. Pablo says, what do you think contributed to the O-line having success, especially after all we thought it would struggle immensely? I think a big part of it is the run game. Offensive linemen, regardless of skill set, love to run block. That's what they want to do. They want to move people. They want to kind of, assert that physical dominance. For New Orleans, that is paramount. There's no doubt about that. So I think for this team, that's played a big factor. But I think the talent's always been there. It's clearly coaching and the scheme and being able to get these guys out in space has been huge because Penning's always been a solid athlete. We know Fuaga's a good athlete the way he's moved. Same with McCoy. Ruiz was running faster than the Dallas Cowboys defensive players on the screen pass to Alvin. So the athleticism's always been there and the skill's always been there, the talent. Now you're just seeing it coached out. And when you start to get that confidence from the run game, I think everything falls in. You're playing against a worn-down defensive line, makes pass blocking a little bit easier. Saints are doing a good job getting help from Juwan Johnson, from Foster Moreau too, whether it's kind of them shifting in motion to help block. So I love what they've done. I love what they've done. I think a lot of it and all of it really comes down to coaching, but they do have talent. They've invested a lot of first-round picks on that offensive line. Say says Tyron, a Super Bowl champion veteran team, and they've had success before, wouldn't be the first time. Yeah, there's a lot of, and I didn't mention Tyron Matthew, but that's a great point. I mean, the guy's been on a championship caliber team. He knows what it takes. Louisiana says, I think Willie Gay will be big in trying to stop Jalen's legs. Also a mix of DeMario, Alante, and Pete. I totally agree with that. You know, you bring in Willie Gay, it's for moments like this. So before we wrap things up, get into our little closing argument here, I just want to get a quick word from one of our sponsors, DraftKings Sportsbook.
TD, Tutty, taking it to the house, whatever you call a touchdown. They matter more at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Ready to place your first NFL bet? Try betting on something simple like a player to score a touchdown. Ready to do a touchdown dance of your own? To do so, you have to score big with DraftKings Sportsbook, the #1 place to bet touchdowns. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code BOOT. That's code BOOT, BOOT, for new customers to get $250 in bonus bets when you bet just $5 and get 1 month of NFL Plus Premium only on DraftKings. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 and over, age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in New Hampshire, Oregon, and Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/ftball. NFL Plus Premium offer available only to new and former NFL Plus subscribers. Additional NFL Plus Premium terms at nfl.com/terms.
Once again, thank you to DraftKings Sportsbook for being part of the program. We greatly appreciate it. Got another comment here from Nate says, I know it's early, but based on how great Kubiak looks, I'm extremely worried about next season where he inevitably goes off to another team as a head coach. Look, I understand, and that's a fear for people. All I can say right now is it's week 3. We'll see what happens in that regard. If Kubiak gets a head coaching job, something went really right for the Saints, and something is going really right for the Saints right now. And great teams have coordinators, promote coordinators, hire coordinators, knowing, especially good coaches, knowing that they're eventually going to leave for better opportunities. But in that moment, you're putting together the best staff that can have a special season. And that's what really matters for the Saints. So we'll cross that bridge when we get there. So that's why I'm not worried about that. It's week 3. And again, I think that, I think that for that, don't worry about it. Because, yeah, if he does leave, sure, we'll figure that out when we get there. But if he gets a head coaching job, then the Saints are going to have a lot of success this year. And that's great for us fans who want to see them thrive. So without further ado, guys, going to get into our closing argument presented by Scott Vicknair. For the Saints, it's pretty simple, guys. You play the Eagles this Sunday. Run the damn ball on this defense. Like I said, giving up over 150 yards rushing per game. The Saints are having over 180 yards rushing per game. We saw the Eagles just get absolutely smoked by the Falcons in the trenches. The Saints, who I believe are a better rushing team, have a better scheme right now, can do that damage and then some to this Eagles team. So go out there, run the football well, and if you can slow down Jalen Hurts' running ability, I think the Saints will be in great shape. Go out there, you move to 3-0. If you do that, what's stopping the Saints from being a legitimate NFC contender and maybe vying for a really, really deep playoff run later this year? Again, it's early, but that's what you start to think about when you take those next steps and you start taking off contenders one by one. So we'll see what happens this Sunday for the Saints. And as always, guys, when the game's at halftime and when the game is final, we'll be here to cover it on the Straight Up Saints podcast, the destination for the Who Dat Nation.